Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sounds of 909, or welcome back if you're a viewer on this channel. Uh, Me and Bryers Music Showcase are going to be reviewing the Byrds' eighth studio album, The Ballad, or just Ballad of Easy Rider. Anything you'd like to add before getting started?
All right. It's not much since the last album. Uh, so little history briefly. So this is the second album with this lineup. You have Roger McGuinn, Clarence White, John York, and Gene Parsons. Um, Big thing about this one was that this was actually the return of their first producer, Terry Melcher. Of course, produced the first two albums, so it was kind of like a little return there, right there. Um, Basically, this album basically came about because this was during the time Easy Rider was in production, and from what I've read, it was Peter Fonda, one of the stars in the film, wanted a song, and they wanted Bob Dylan to write it, but I think Bob started it, but he was like, I'll just give it to Rogers and then have him finish it, and which he did. And of course, the song was featured in the film. It was the title. It was like the main theme of the movie, and it was actually the movie the band actually got a small resurgence, and that's pretty much what this whole album was, just to kind of capitalize on that. And so yeah, they recorded a bunch of songs, and this is the album. Last note is that this is the last album with John York because he would leave after this, mainly because they were kind of feeling he was kind of being wishy washy, like he was part of the band, but didn't think he was truly. He felt like the band basically felt he was basically looking at other things to do, so they just let him. They just let John kind of do his thing, and so yeah, again, not a whole lot to say in terms of behind the scenes, but yeah, we'll go more if the album is good in our track by track discussion.
Wow, another a band member leaving the Birds. Wow, what a surprise!
I
Haven't
know,
heard that
right?
one yet.
Mm.
Seems to be a recurring thing with the Birds is a band
Yeah.
member leaving.
Appears though. Hmm.
I think, well, for the bands that I know, this has to be like the band that has like the most absent members on it. Like the amount of people who come and go in this band is like to me
Mm.
astonishing,
Yeah, definitely up there.
crazy. I know there's Yes, and I know there's Fleetwood Mac, but this is definitely up there with band members leaving a lot. Not the album, but the band in general.
Yeah, yeah.
Album opens up really strong with the Ballad of Easy Rider. Like, yeah, I love this track. I haven't heard this album in a very long time. Like, I've been listening to their first six albums recently a lot, but these last two albums I haven't listened to in a very long time. And listening to this track after a while, I forgot how great this track was. It's really good.
Yeah, I mean, this carries on their tradition of starting an album strong.
Hmm.
And yeah, I loved it right away. There's actually two versions of the song. There was the movie version, which is kind of a bit more stripped down, is more folky. Definitely has that more folk rock sound. The difference on this album is that because Terry Melcher adds a string arrangement to this version, which I don't mind. I think both. I did listen to both versions, and both are pretty good for for what they're needed for. But I love the strings on it. I love this song right away. Again, Roger does a great vocal, has a nice little vocal. I mean, he's not the most greatest singer ever, but I think his voice really suited for this song. And yeah, this is a good song. I really love this one.
If only they put the amount of effort they did on their opening tracks like they did with their closing tracks.
Yeah,
It,
we'll get to
it,
that later.
yeah, because yeah, I know you're gonna have something to say, but I also have a thing to say about their last
Hmm.
track on the album.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah. Next track, Fido, or I don't know
Fido.
if
I think it's Fido. Yeah.
Fido. I think it's a great track to like right after the first track. It's pretty heavy for a bird song, I must say. Like I wasn't expecting it. Well, I don't remember it. I don't like I said. It's been years since I listened to this particular album, but it's been a while since I heard it. And man, it's a lot heavier I than I remember it. And for a bird song, it's extremely heavy.
Yeah, yeah, I agree to that. This was written by John York, the bass player, and this is the only song he wrote on the album, and he also sung it. So yeah, the one thing I've heard, the big complaint I've heard based on what other people are saying, that when these guys, of course you have Roger McGuinn, but when the other members start to sing, then it starts to kind of feel kind of out of place. But if you were to just detach that, I think the new members, they definitely have some good songs in here. So basically, it's called Fido because but when I researched, this was supposed to be about a stray dog. So Fido, common dog name. So sure. So pretty much a very good country rock song. Good bass playing on here. Drum. There's even a mini drum solo on here, which is kind of cool. And of course, Clarence White has some great guitar playing. As I won't be gushing about him that much in this episode, in this video, but still has some good standout moments here and there on this album. So again, very strong song. So yeah, it was a good one. I liked it.
I agree. He was a lot better on the last album, but he still plays great on this album too.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, and I thought it was cool that there was a drum solo. Never in a million years would I ever think there would be a drum solo in a bird
Yeah,
song.
no.
Very impressive. Keeping on the great song track, "Oil in My Lamp." I quite like the song too. It's another great song, and I'm like, wow. You know, this way what I consider to be the start of their later period. The first five albums I would consider to be their earlier period, and then Ro- Sweetheart of the Rodeo when Dr. Byrds and Mr. Hyde's like sort of like the transitional albums, and this is like sort of like their what I consider to be their later period. And you wouldn't expect there to be great songs after their fifth album, Notorious Bird Brothers, but they're still impressing me,
Yeah,
and I like it.
yeah, yeah. Kind of bouncing off that. Yeah, this is another very good song. Like again, there's a great rhythm section on here, and I think on this album, I think the new members, I think their vocal harmony is starting to get a little tighter, which is kind of a shame because of course John York would leave after this. So just when they were starting to find their footing, and one of them had to leave, so kind of a shame. But besides that, great guitar textures on here again, and yeah, just another very great song.
Yeah. Next track on the album, Tulsa Country. It's a pretty good song. Not as good as the first three tracks, but I still think it's keeping up the momentum pretty good. Not a whole lot to say about this track, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I didn't have a whole lot to say about it, but yeah, I still quite enjoyed this quite a bit. I think I liked it maybe a little bit more than you. Again, it's like just a good, feel good country rock song. I like the fiddle in it. I think the fiddle was a nice touch, and this was a cover, by the way. But besides that, I think again Roger does a good vocal on here. So yeah, I like this one. I think it was very good. One of the highlights for me.
Nice. Closing out side one on a banger, not a banger, but on a strong note, Jack Tar the Sailor. I think it's a pretty good way to end off side one. Again, not I don't have a whole lot to say, but I think it's a pretty good way to end off the first side of the record.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. I I mean, for me, I think it's for me personally. I think it was kind of the weakest song on side one. Again, musically, it's pretty interesting because again, this is another cover. It's basically a sea shanty, basically, and again, good guitar playing by Clarence White again. But I'm kind of mixed on McGuinn's vocals on this one. He's trying to put on this English accent, but when I hear it, I can kind of hear the English accent, but there are times it kind of drops. He kind of drops from the accent, so it's kind of back to his American accent. Like it's doesn't really stay consistent throughout. But again, but yeah, the music is still pretty good. But yeah, for me, it's the weakest on side one, and one of the weaker songs so far.
Okay. Uh, Open up side two on a strong note. Jesus is just all right. Man, what a strong way to open up the second side of the record. I quite like it a lot. It is just a great song to open up the second side. Yeah, Like I said, this album surprised me because I just remember it being just an alright album. But yeah,
Mhm.
I'm remembering it. I remembered it pretty poorly. I think this really great song.
Yeah, and this is another one of those bird songs where I actually heard before, but it wasn't by the Birds. It was actually, and I brought it out preparing for this, but of course, the first time I heard the song was the Doobie Brothers version on their second album. And yeah, I've always known the Doobie Brothers version, but I didn't know there was a version before. And this version, of course, the Birds version would influence the Doobie Brothers a couple years later, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, kind of like the Doobie Brothers version, this is another great. This is a great song. I mean, so far, regardless of who sings this, I still think it's a really great song. Um, yeah, just trying to see. Yeah, great playing all around. Again, guitar playing is great. The vocal harmony throughout the song is really great. There's a slight string arrangement, which is you don't really notice it when it's there, and I think it's kind of a nice little thing they added there. But yeah, this is another great highlight.
Yeah. Uh, it's all over now, Baby Blue. Uh, alternate mix. It says on iTunes. I like it. It's a pretty good song. Not nearly as good as the last track that was on, but it's pretty good. Again, I don't really have a whole lot to say.
Yeah, actually, I think I like. I think it definitely. This was another kind of a highlight for me. It has a very somber tone, and I'm kind of a sucker for when songs have kind of a somber tone. So it was kind of more up my alley. And again, I think the harmony, the vocal harmony on here was definitely kept my interest throughout. Um, Again, another country rock song. I think it works really well. Even though it's kind of the one of the longer songs on the album, I think this was about over 4 minutes, which is pretty long for a bird song. But I still think it was really good. And this is a Bob Dylan cover, and apparently this was a cover they've had on the back burner since 1965, but they didn't get to it till now. So I guess better late than never. So yeah, I like this one.
Hmm, interesting. Yeah. Uh, yeah. There must be someone I can turn to. Uh, yeah, it's pretty good. I don't know how you feel about this track, but yeah, these two tracks kind of bring the album down just a little bit. Yeah, it's good, but not great.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I'm kind of on this. I'm kind of the same boat on this one. Again, this is another cover. You have Gene Parsons on lead vocals, and he's a fine singer. This is, but this is nothing really too much about it. It's a cheating song basically, and it's kind of a slower song. But yeah, it was okay.
Hmm. Gunga Din. Um, this brings it up a little bit. It's just my problem with this album is that is like my problem with the Fifth Dimension album is that it has a great first side, but then the second side just lets me down.
Mm,
This song is an exception to that. This is like the only song on the second side that I actually like quite a bit. Yeah, it's a really good song. Yeah, I like it.
okay, oh, that's fun. That's cool. But yeah, another Gene Parsons song that he wrote and sung, and this was based on two incidences. The first one is when they were supposed to do a show with Chuck Berry, but he bailed, and then the second incident was when John York was going to a restaurant with his mom, but they got kicked, but they wouldn't allow him in for some reason. I don't know how they released the lyrics. I didn't really go that deep into it, but yeah, that was kind of interesting. But
Yeah.
yeah, this was probably my favorite song on side two. Yeah, again, great acoustic playing on here. Again, nice solid rhythm by the drums on this one, and I think Clarence White again another good standout for him on guitar. But yeah, uh, not the greatest. Again, not the greatest in the Byrds catalog, but I still think this is a pretty good song. And like I said, this is probably the best song on side two.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Um, Deportee plane wreck at the Los Gatos. I mean, it's all right. Like I say, I don't love or hate it. It's just an all right track. just another just another boring song on side two.
Yeah. I can see that one. I did like this song, but it was. I mean, at one point, I think at one point it was in my top five, but it kind of dropped. I think it was I think it got to like seventh place now. But yeah, it's another one of the more somber songs. This was a Woody Guthrie's cover, and this is more of a typical, more usual country song. I thought like the closing, when the song was closing out. I think that was kind of nice. This was based on an actual plane crash involving immigrant workers. But yeah, it was. I did enjoy the song. I did enjoy the song. So yeah, there's not a whole lot to say, but I did like it.
Okay. Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins. I'll let you talk about it first.
I mean, uh, we're back to the space songs again. And yep, I mean, half the song is basically they're just counting down, and then the other half is kind of like this weird. I guess you might have heard it's like a meditation that actual astronauts actually said before they went to space. From what I understand, uh, there's really not a whole lot to say about it. Kind of another one of their more humorous songs to close out an album, which again, really has never worked for me. So yeah, not a good way to close out the album again.
Yeah, it's really bad. Yeah, the whole song is just not good at all. Yeah, I want you to say it first because I have nothing to really say. I was going through this album and I'm like, I had the. It's like I like this sound better than the Fifth Dimension album. I know some bird enthusiasts might be like, oh, how could you say that? But the highs on this album aren't as good as the highs on 5D, but the lows on this album aren't as bad as 5D's lows. But this is like 5D where it starts off great with the first side and then he goes downhill after the first side.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's my biggest problem with the album is that. Yeah. What would you say your five favorite songs, a dishonorable song, and your album rating would be?
All right. Okay, so number five, I have Tulsa Country, and then number four, I have Gunga Din. Number three, I have It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. Number two, Jesus is Just All Right, and number one is Ballad of Easy Rider. For a dishonorable track, it's got to be Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins. I mean, there was no question on that one. There's no question on that. And then for a rating, so this was an interesting one because it's kind of like this is a hard one to rate because is it one of their classics? No, but I still think I do think that the highs on this album, especially my top five, really made this album really made a very good pleasant listen for me. So I'm like you. I do think I think I would rank this above Fifth Dimension, and I do see the similarities with it. But I think it just barely squeaks an 8 out of 10 for me, mainly because of the high of my favorite songs on here. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. It was a pleasant surprise. I didn't expect to like it as much, but I was surprised.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, this it's funny too is because I really like the next album, Untitled slash Unissued. I consider that to be their late period Younger Than Yesterday album. I'd say not nowhere near as good as that album, but I consider this to be like their 5D of their their weird lineup change, and then that the next album's like their Younger Than Yesterday of their weird lineup change. But
Yeah.
yeah, my five favorite songs will have to be "Oil in My Lamp." My fourth favorite would be "Jesus Is Just All Right." Then "Gunga Din." "Ballad of Easy Rider" is my second favorite, and then "Fido" or "Fido," as you would say, or how it's really pronounced, is definitely my favorite song on the album.
Cool.
What's there to say? It has a drum solo. It's pretty heavy for a Bird song. Who knows? It may or may not be in my top 10 favorite Bird songs.
All right.
Definitely in my honorable mentions, at least, to say that. Okay. I saw an original Mr. Tambourine Man Younger Than Yesterday at the record store today. Sadly, $50 each.
Oh, that's
Uh, that's a
that's
shame. I would well. Was it a mono copy of Younger Than Yesterday or a stereo copy of Younger Than Yesterday? Just curious. Got Signals in the game instead. Ooh,
okay.
those are good albums.
Yeah,
And
that's
Signals
nice.
is one of my favorite albums. Obviously, the dishonorable track is going to be, Armstrong, Coltrane, and Collins. I mean, me and Breyer weren't expecting it to be different. Um, yeah, and my album rating's gonna go. I'm gonna agree with Breyer. It's definitely an 8 out of 10 album.
Cool,
If it
nice.
wasn't for the highs on the album, it'd be a lot lower. But yeah, you should definitely check this out at least once. I
Yeah.
wouldn't recommend. Well, here's my question to you, Breyer. Would you buy this CD?
Um, I think I still would buy the CD. Is it? I don't think it's essential,
Mm-hmm.
but I just really like some of the songs on here. I think I'll probably see if I can find one pretty soon.
Cool. Yeah. For me, I'd say this is not an album I'd recommend buying. Like Breyer said, it's not an essential. I'd say if I was talking about essential albums, I'd say 3 albums I would definitely recommend buying is Mr. Tambourine Man, Younger Than Yesterday, and Notorious Bird Brothers. I like Sweetheart of the Rodeo better than Mr. Tambourine Man, but I wouldn't consider Sweetheart of the Rodeo an essential to buy right away. It's a listen album, but it's just a preference for me.
Hmm. Yeah.
Both in mono. Oh man, I would have bought Younger Than Yesterday because I love that
Hmm.
album. I found Younger Than Yesterday for $25 on Discog, so I thought I'd wait to buy it. Yeah,
Okay.
that's fair.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, man. So any last things you want to mention before ending the video?
Again, not much to say. Again, it's kind of like a middle of the road album, but if you have the time, maybe give it at least one listen.
Hmm. I agree. The highs are high, but the lows are low. It's a good way to say it.
Yeah.
Next video, it's gonna be an album called Untitled, Unissued, and first half of the album is live stuff, and the next half of it's like half of live album, half of
Yeah.
studio album.
Hmm.
What I was planning on doing is us reviewing the studio half first,
Okay.
because I always like to do this, listen to the studio half of an album, then the live half, because it's always weird to start it with because Gumma and this album starts off
Right.
with the live stuff, and I always thought that
Yeah.
was weird. I always like to finish it off with the live stuff, but yeah, when you're making your notes, make notes for the studio half first, and then make notes for the live stuff last, because
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah, it's gonna be the other way around. Because on iTunes and everywhere else, it's gonna show the live stuff first. It's 7 tracks, like it's like 6 songs, and then 8 Miles High takes up an entire side of music, and
Mm.
I'm excited to talk about that because I
Okay.
have a lot to say. Not a whole lot, but I have things to say about that track, and I'm kind of curious what you would think about it. Because
Yeah, I'm definitely curious on that too. And I will say, I guess I'll get out of the way. So, I'm always kind of mixed on those types of albums where it's half studio and half live because I'm always like, pick one sort of thing. But I'm not totally against them. So who knows? Maybe this album will change my mind.
uh, it's definitely not an album that I. It's not. It's probably one of. It's definitely an album that doesn't represent those kind of albums that well. If you want an album like that, listen to Wheels of Fire by Cream. You ever listened to that album before?
Not in full.
It's definitely one of those albums where it definitely warrants the live disc because Cream is just really good. Is a really good live band. Byrds, not as much, not nearly as much as Cream, but yeah. I'm very interested in your opinions of the live stuff when we
Okay.
get to that, and the one side of just 8 Miles High. That's
Okay. That's yeah. I'm definitely curious on how that's gonna go.
yeah, and yeah, excited for that. I'm excited for it, and yeah, that's gonna be it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Basically, a 25-minute video. Enjoy the rest of your day, and bye.